12th, 2011, the December 12th, 2011, a regular meeting of the Littleton Planning Commission. So can we have a roll call, Doreen?
Commissioner Bagnall.
Present.
Commissioner Bockenstead.
Here.
Commissioner Coronado.
Here.
Commissioner Elrod. Commissioner Newfinke.
Here.
Commissioner Metcalf.
Here.
Commissioner Ranville.
Here.
Commissioner Samuelson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. And this is a reminder to turn off your cell phones, even if it's in the airport mode. It still can interfere with the sound system in this room. So that takes us to any changes to the agenda?
Do we know it?
I might want to wait for a few minutes for Karina.
Okay, or,
Bring Matt up. Or bring Matt up.
yeah. Matt, do you want to go ahead and come up? Steve?
Yes, I have a change. I'd like to move the general business to after the public hearing, so we can deal with the downtown plan when we're not going to need to make the people for the public hearing wait.
Okay, any objections to that? Okay, so we'll move that, the general item, general business, to after the public hearings. Any other changes to the agenda?
I'd also like to add after, since one of the public hearings is apparently not going to happen tonight, perhaps we could add a discussion of the upcoming priorities for work plan for next year after we go through the approval process for the downtown neighborhood plan.
Any objections to that? None? Seeing none. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, let's move to the approval of the minutes for the October 24, 2011 regular meeting. And I do have one change. On line 37, it wasn't Commissioner Elrod, it was Commissioner Knufinke.
Which page?
On the first page, sorry.
I'm sorry, will you repeat that change?
It was, instead of Commissioner Elrod, it was Commissioner Knufinke.
I'd like to move that we approve these minutes with that change.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. And that takes us to scheduled and unscheduled appearances. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the Planning Commission on subject matters that are not related to the public hearings tonight? Come on down. Pam?
Yes, I think you can hear me. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at 5402 South Nevada Street at the northern tip of the downtown football. And I'd like to talk about the downtown plan and the city plan, the next steps. I know it's not final yet. I don't think anybody believes that the downtown plan is perfect or is what we hoped it would be. It didn't get where it could have gotten, and it's not as strong as it could be, in my opinion. So what I wanted to talk about is what I hope you do next. What I hope you do next is undertake the city plan. And I'd like to, the city plan will, from my point of view, help you define our design constraints. It'll force us to look at what is happening with traffic. I hope staff will undertake a study of population and population of residential and business so that we understand what we're trying to support and what we have to have budget to support in the future. And these would be at time segments like 5 years, 25 years, 50 years, 60 years. No point in doing a plan if you don't know what you're trying to plan for. So when that happens, that city plan, then I hope that you revisit the downtown plan and make some amendments. And my specific concern is, of course, the height map. I've spoken about the height map before. I think the Planning Commission is still kind of going for these very high heights. I happened to go down to Highlands, north of downtown, last weekend. And what you see there is 4-story structures next to single-family homes. And the quality of life for those people has been impacted very negatively. Their homes are shaded. They have no views where they used to have plenty of sun and good views. Their property values may or may not go up because their remaining plot may not be a good one to build on. Englewood has recently struggled with this. What do we do with gap fill? So I don't think our downtown plan has provisions to prevent that kind of gap building up. The downtown plan doesn't answer questions for residents like, what will happen to my property taxes? What will happen to my property value? I know you're shaking your head, and I'd love to hear what you think. What's going to happen to our quality of life? And how does this plan protect and improve property values and our quality of life? And the plan should help us be able to understand that. That's fundamental, I think. Also, the plan should answer those questions. I don't want to ignore everyone else. Business, developers, the city itself, taxpayers for the whole city and what the burden is they're being asked to support for the downtown, visitors, other stakeholders. There's many other parties involved. I don't speak for them tonight. I just speak as a resident. So that's what I'm expressing, is concern about the downtown plan, that I hope you undertake the city plan, get those design constraints figured out, and then revisit the downtown plan. And in the meantime, please don't do anything radical. Don't do something that's 2 steps where it should be 1 step right now. I think to jump from a single-family home area to this 40-foot height limit is not good for us and will create problems over the next 25, 30 years. So let me...
Thank you very much. And just to let you know, we removed the height map from the downtown area plan. So we're pretty much retaining the existing heights, which are pretty much unlimited based on
Right.
the PDO process. So just thought I'd let you know that.
And I want the limited height map, so...
Okay.
Thanks for your input,
Yeah.
Pam. Appreciate that. I have a question. When you, just for clarification, when you say the city plan, are you referring to the citywide comp plan?
The
Okay.
comprehensive plan where, you know, we'd look at traffic on Santa Fe and Broadway. We'd look at the corridors east-west and understand what's happening there. We'd figure out where parking is. We'd understand how traffic flows and what a challenge that is for business and what impact it has on residents, et cetera, et cetera. And that's only traffic. I mean, I think there's a number of other issues that the city plan would help clarify.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, we will move to the item of public hearings. And our first public hearing of the evening is Graham's Creative Kids Learning Center conditional use time extension at 5950 South Platte Canyon Road. It's case number CDU 10-0003. Jan?
Good evening, Commission. First, I'd like to enter into the record the exhibits. Exhibit A, the city staff report and attachments. Exhibit B, the area reference map. Exhibit C, the city comp plan, Goddard neighborhood by reference. Exhibit D, the city zoning ordinance by reference. Exhibit E, the official zoning maps by reference. Exhibit F, proof of posting. Exhibit G, the proof of publication. And Exhibit H, the public hearing roster. The Graham's Creative Kids Learning Center is located in the shops at Columbine. which is located in the southeast corner of South Platte Canyon Road and West Bowles Avenue. The actual learning center itself is located in, the shopping center is composed of several buildings here. The major building, of course, is this outline here. This outline here that's labeled C1 is the building that the learning center is in presently. And last year they received approval from Planning Commission to expand the floor area space of their use into a portion of this building, Building B, and there's a restaurant on the far west end of that building. The conditional use for that site was originally approved by the Planning Commission in 1989, and in 1998, Graham's Learning Center moved into that space and continued a conditional use approval for the school in 1998. Then in last January, the Commission approved an expansion of the use into this other building I just pointed out. There was some conditions that the Planning Commission put on there, and that's noted in the staff report. They limited the number of children to 101. The ages of the children would be within the ranges of infancy to 12 years, and the amount of the floor area accommodating the child care center would not exceed 5,240 square feet. The details of that application and approval were attached in your staff report from the materials from last year. I'll just sort of keep this fairly short. The city code requirements on conditional uses is noted in section 10.8.3 of the zoning code. It contains 4 conditions that would terminate the right to operate a conditional use, and one of those conditions is that the failure to initiate the operation within 12 months of the approval will cause the termination of a conditional use. So in order to keep that from happening, the applicant may request and the Planning Commission may grant a time extension of up to 6 months with no more than 2 of those extensions granted. And so the applicant has come in a little early before January, so he didn't have a little problem with the time gap in there and is requesting a 6-month extension. He has turned in building permit application and is expecting to proceed ahead, so they have definitely shown their due diligence in that area. They just won't be able to actually get the construction completed and get the use initiated in that new space within that 6-month time period from last, or with that 12 months time period from last January. If you do approve this extension, staff doesn't feel that it is affecting the child care center's ability to comply with the conditions of Chapter 8 and any other city code requirements or the criteria and conditions of your previous approval. And so we do, staff does recommend approval of the time extension. And the shopping center manager is present tonight to represent the applicant for any questions you might have of them.
Any questions?
For me.
Steve?
Couple questions. We're the final approval on this one?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if we deny the extension, what does that mean?
Well, it probably means he'd have to go through the whole process again. The whole application process, referral process, review process. The time extension request mainly is he submits a letter like he did, and we post it for public hearing, which we have tonight for that time extension. If you didn't approve it, then his conditional use would terminate, and he would have to reapply for the conditional use, go through the 45-day referral and review period, and probably come back before you again. But
How long does something like that take to go through that process?
oh, probably 3 or 4 months.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Related question, I think, and just out of curiosity, since they had a conditional use on the original school for a number of years and then came back for a conditional use request which expanded it, say if it did expire, does that mean the original conditional use expires? Is it now?
Oh, that's a good question, but probably not, because the original conditional use was for the space he's in now, and he's using that space.
Right.
So it would just affect his expansion.
Okay.
And to add to your question, it would be a 3 to 4 month time period for him to go through that process. Also, the expenses incurred, application fees and consulting expenses and all, so that would add to that. So that's kind of the difference between the more simpler version of getting a time extension.
And just one other quick question too, just doing the math here on the square footage, the 3480 plus 1710 doesn't
Add up, does it? Well, Mr. Thomas, the shopping center manager, can probably address that. It's got to do with, I believe, leasable square footage versus the actual square footage, and I think that's where there's a little bit of a difference of 50 square feet or something like that, because I remember you explaining that to me last year about that.
Could you come to the
Yeah,
microphone?
come here. Yeah, it was
remember.
confusing to me in a previous letter of his, and he explained that to me about the actual leasable square footage versus what the real building.
I seem to remember we had a problem with the numbers last time, didn't jive too.
And it was, I believe it had to do with that, so he can address that when he comes up, I think. That'd be all right.
Any other questions? Dave?
I'm not aware, in looking around the neighborhood, of any changes in the conditions we observed at the time of the original approval earlier this year. The documents we were given were the original plans, and I don't see anything in the exhibits that would say that there's been any kind of change in what's going on around there that would change the context for this operation. So staff's presenting or representing that there really have been no substantive changes.
The only real changes are actually kind of positive ones. Denver Water is going to start ahead with their redevelopment on their site, and we do have an application in to redevelopment the gas station site there on the corner that's in front of this property. We've got a grocery store tenant going in across the street at the other. I mean, there's actual positive change going on out there, but none of those would affect, this wouldn't affect any of those things occurring.
Thank you.
Okay. No more questions? Then we would like to hear from the applicant. If you would. And if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Thomas. I'm the managing member of ARC Camelback, which owns the shops at Calamite Valley. My address is 832 South 3rd Street, Jacksonville, Oregon. Shopping center address is on record.
Okay. Any?
There was a question on the square footage last year. There were two ways and I have to go back as I was sitting here being asked this question, I believe that I mentioned that to Jan a year ago. And the way the ordinance was written was correct on the square footage. I thought there was a typo on that, but the concept that was causing some confusion before that was the fact that there are interior measurements, which is the way the state measures the usable area for the children, versus the BOMA standard measurement for the space, exterior wall, center line of demising walls, et cetera. So there was a gross square footage and there was a net square footage. But I could do the math. If you give me a minute, I can do that, or.
That's a good enough explanation for me.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. This is a public hearing, and if anybody wishes to speak regarding this case, there's no names on the roster, so please come up and speak now.
And nobody's sitting in the room.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me close it.
I was going to move to close
Okay.
the public hearing.
So do we have a second?
Second.
Craig, second, because I heard you first. So all those in favor of closing the public hearing? And that is unanimous. All right, can we have a motion on the table?
Yeah, I move that the Planning Commission Resolution 1109, granting a 6-month extension of the conditional use approval for Graham's Creative Kids Learning Center, 5950 South Platte Canyon, be approved.
Second. Thanks, Greg.
Okay, discussion?
I'm only going to offer one gratuitous comment.
Okay.
Because I can't resist. I'm gratified to see that obviously the law does not preclude the city through its ordinances from establishing time limits on uses, conditional or otherwise, and a process for giving a definite time limit up front so that the owner and financing authority knows that that time limit is in place with the possibility of time extensions. I'm a little dismayed to find that the city doesn't see that transferring to the sunset provision we tried to put into the comp plan. But I don't think anything's going to change at this point. Totally gratuitous.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. And thank you very much. All right, so that takes us to the second public hearing, which is the Jiffy Lube, 2411 West Bellevue Avenue, appeal of Development Review Committee's denial of a site development plan amendment. It's case number SDP 11-114-0006. And Ernie?
Good evening, Commissioners. In regards to that case, before the meeting, I placed a letter that we received from the applicant's legal counsel requesting a continuance of this case. The continuance is being requested to consider options and explore alternatives. City staff supports the request to continue the case and asks that the Planning Commission continue the case till January 16, 2012.
And we need to vote on that, right?
Yes.
Because it's continued to a date certain. Okay. Yes, we need a motion.
Is it tabling it or just to continue?
Continuing to January 16th.
I make the motion to continue the case until January 16th meeting.
Second.
Okay. So all those in favor of continuing? And that is unanimous?
Madam Chairman, if I can offer a brief comment. I don't know if everyone else has had a chance to go out and look at it, but I'd pass these photographs along and strongly suggest you go out and look at context and details of building by building. Also, a note of clarification because it confused me. The two pictures we got in our packet for the existing car wash and the original lube shop make it look like the materials were different. They're not. I talked to the manager, and in fact, the lube shop originally did look exactly the same.
And actually, today I went to the county and was able to pull up a photo from 2004.
It was just a little confusing. That's why I
Exactly.
wanted to make sure. Okay.
I felt the same way, but I was able to find a letter on or a picture on the county website that showed it more closely matched.
In any case, I'd encourage everybody to go out and take a good, close look at the situation.
Dave, can you submit that to the city, and the city can include it in our packets for January 16th?
Sure.
Is
Yeah,
that
that's fine.
possible? Okay. That sounds good. So that takes us to an item of general business, which is the approval of the Planning Commission's response to the City Council's amendments to the Downtown Neighborhood Plan. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is if we had any, to kind of limit the discussion on this, because we had talked about this so much, to kind of spend maybe not more than 10 minutes on the discussion related to this unless we have some big issues. So, Dennis, did you want to start our discussion?
Absolutely. At your November 28th study session, you reviewed the comments that City Council had made on the plan and agreed upon a set of 23 amendments that you thought were appropriate, that you wanted to incorporate and send back to City Council. You asked that those amendments be incorporated into two types of document. One is one which shows both the draft as reviewed and approved by City Council, and then also the changes that were made on the left-hand side, and then a complete document, the final document, as would be shown incorporating the changes that you were recommending. With the agreed-upon changes, because that was a study session, you could not take a formal vote. And so the decision was made to bring that forward to the meeting tonight and take formal action on what you agreed upon on that November 28th study session. So, we're here for any questions.
Okay, any questions? No questions? Okay,
You
Dave?
knew this wasn't going to pass without comment. To avoid the usual expected long-running, rambling commentary from me were I to speak extemporaneously, I've prepared a written statement recognizing that I was not here for most of the discussion 2 weeks ago, but because I think I need to explain how I'm going to end up in voting on this. So I'll pass those down. And Dennis, a couple of copies down there for you too. I've tried this at home, so I'll try and I think I can keep it under a reasonable 4 to 5 minutes.
It's not 2 pages long.
Did you say
No, it's 1 page.
45 or 4 to 5?
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere in that time frame. I appreciate that you all discussed the amended document at length 2 weeks ago, and I hasten to note that I did, in fact, watch the video of the meeting before coming here tonight. I was particularly encouraged by Karina's statements championing principles that most of us endeavored for nearly 4 years to embed in this planning document, by Steve's willingness to stand his ground in voting to oppose the discarding of such principles, and by Kurt's candid recognition that in the rush to abandon those principles, there's nothing to be gained by clinging to words and numbers that have been drained of any effect or substance. I also appreciate the desire of our new city manager and community development director to mediate between a planning commission and a city council that have seriously diverged over what this process ostensibly set out to accomplish 4 years ago. In dramatically shifting the orientation of City Council in 2007, this community sent a clear message that established principle, the rule of law, and long-term vision are important to them. In reforming the Planning Commission and redirecting their charge to update the city's comprehensive plan in 2008, Council clearly emphasized the fundamental importance of starting from the community's values and intentions, and then specifically noted concerns about recent issues and actions that appeared to have ignored planning principles already in place. In starting with downtown, which was mutually determined to be the area most at risk for questionable change, or arguably no change at all, the Planning Commission clearly worked tirelessly to identify community consensus, reconcile apparent differences over what elements were critical to the overall vision, and explore with planning professionals and field observation both the desired and less desired consequences of certain combinations of those details into a consistent fabric for healthy future development opportunities in Littleton. And then we stumbled and ultimately lost our direction and our dedication. First, we allowed more personal agendas to divert our focus from codifying the overall vision and arguments for more parks, more bikes, and less cars, more historic preeminence, more diversity, more family orientation, and more devotion to sustainability left us floundering on the fringes of our intent. That led staff and council to take over, imposing ordered progress and professional pretension over the messy efforts of wrangling a practical, objective, predictable blueprint for our future. Then, having yielded to pressure to dilute what real substance we knew the plan required, we watched as council gutted what remained and made plain what should have been said up front. To wit, no matter what we told you in the community 4 years ago about determining why past planning decisions repeatedly contravened provisions of comp plan and zoning, or how the transit impact zone designation added unnecessarily to administrative complexities for even minor property redevelopment, or what was wrong with a planned development overlay process that consistently failed to balance self-serving concessions to developers with comparable gains to the community, and how we might embody in zoning, comp plan, design standards, and administrative reviews the clearly stated, objectively applied principles that will consistently support the community's vision over the subjective biases and preferences of individuals favoring short-term benefits. So council insists that the flexibility to make or override any planning or development decision, asserting their own transitory priorities without the messy hindrance of substantive principles embraced by the overall community and comp plan and incorporated explicitly and consistently in the city's zoning ordinances, design standard and guidelines, and staff or DRC procedures. I will therefore vote no on this motion tonight, not because I don't see the need for updating and enhancing comp plan, not because I believe my vote will block adoption of this gutless document, and not because anything we do here tonight might in any way stop this council or the next from taking actions contrary to the goals or policies of a comprehensive plan whenever it suits them. Whether to solicit and approve a big box store where comp plan says one should never be, or to favor a property owner with an ordinance change that egregiously violates an explicit comp plan prescription against the encroachment of commercial uses into residential neighborhoods. I'm voting no so I can look at myself in the mirror every morning without regret and look my fellow citizens in the eye without shame because I failed to honor their intentions or their trust.
Thanks. Any other comments or concerns? Seeing none, so are we ready to go ahead and vote? The vote takes 5 votes to be able to approve this. So any other comments before we vote? Any concerns? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor? That is 6 in favor and 1 against. The motion carries. And that takes us to discussion of a potential work plan. And what I was thinking of, and this depends on what the planning commissioners want to do, I was thinking about maybe we can illustrate some of the things that we need to do. And I think, Dave, we can take some of the points that you made and put it in the potential work plan. And some of the subject matters I was thinking of includes addressing the Santa Fe corridor, the Broadway corridor, parking, heights, the PDO process, the overall comp plan template for the overall plan, the potential downtown neighborhood implementation reviews, and also determining the neighborhoods that we need to include in the actual overall comp plan. And the one, Dave, to your point, is a process for undertaking a new comprehensive plan or neighborhood plan that we need to work through with the city council as to what that process might be. So I was thinking if we can outline some of those areas, then we can use it as kind of a stepping stone in to move forward in the planning process. So what do you guys think? Good idea, bad idea? Glenn?
Chairman and Planning Commission, I guess just to give you an idea of the next steps with council and the new city manager, on January 3rd, I think what he's going to present to them are very 30,000-foot level goals and hopefully get the council's buy-in on those. And it'll be things, how do we make Littleton a great place to work, play, and live, those kind of more standard, very broad brush goals. From there, the staff will take that back and put together more of the working details and what elements those might be. So this is very helpful for us because I think whatever you throw out, not that we can get them all in the first year, but I think they'll fit into a category that we'll see discussed on January 3rd. And then the council will have a retreat in February. I'm not sure what that date is. And then we'll get into more of the nuts and bolts of, what our work plan would be. So any, brainstormed ideas, there's a number of things. We have a long list that went back into the downtown comp plan. So keep in mind we have that direction as well. So, but anything else, we'd be happy to hear it. And if you give us a chance to write it down too, Linda.
That'd be good if we had a whiteboard or something.
Yeah, do we have any whiteboard anywhere that we could
If
use?
somebody could write something down here for the behind us.
Oh,
We
yeah,
can do that.
with a piece of paper.
Carol, now?
Dave, I think maybe I can just start it by saying what you said here is how we might embody zoning comp plan, design standards, and administrative reviews. The clearly stated objectively applied principles that will consistently support the community's vision over the subjective biases. I mean, I think that's definitely one item that we really need to discuss and work through in developing within this comp plan process.
Recognizing that we discussed it repeatedly over 4 years, most pointedly in the last 6 weeks, to no avail whatsoever, according to staff and city council. So I see no point in beating that dead horse. The bottom line is council will rule over anything in writing that we would produce, that comp plan is a daydream, in no way to be reflected in zoning ordinances or decisions made by council or future planning commissions. So I don't see any reason to waste our time talking about it.
I don't know what the rest of the commissioners think. Yeah, I think to me that there's still needs to be some kind of clarification in the process.
I agree.
I agree.
Process and responsibility.
Okay, so is our first one the...
And along the lines of what Dave's mentioned, process, responsibility, and authority. And I think also, you know, in order to not to do anything against quality, but in order to move the process forward at an acceptable pace, I think we need to spend time learning the best parts of what we have, putting it into a template so that we can apply it to the, you know, what's our next neighborhood that we're going to cover. I mean, it seems to me we could have a template for all of the additional 4 or 5 neighborhoods that we have to cover. They may not have the complexities, but so I think that's a high on the agenda to develop a template.
So that's the second item, is to develop the template. So the first is
For the neighborhood plans you're talking about.
If I can add to that or back up a little bit, we'd already decided months ago the next area to take up.
years ago.
Okay, years ago. And certainly if the downtown area was selected as the first order of business because of the degree to which it was likely to be subjected to change in the coming years, then the corridor between South Santa Fe and the Platte River certainly falls not far behind that. So I think we've settled that. The other question we need to address is how are we going to approach the rest of ComPlan? The existing comprehensive plan identifies neighborhoods by drawing very large lines around large areas on a map. The south neighborhood, for example, is 1.5 miles long, contains a variety of what might be called neighborhoods. I don't think we've yet agreed upon what constitutes a neighborhood, how best to approach the question of neighborhood similarities in goals and intentions or neighborhood differences. And I think until we do that, we're in no position to start identifying one by one the 5 or 6 or 40 neighborhoods that we're going to start targeting. I think that discussion needs to occur first.
Okay, so I have 2 from you, Dave. One is the approach to the comp plan and defining neighborhood characteristics and identify similarities. And then I also have define neighborhood boundaries. So once we figure out the characteristics and what we want within the neighborhoods, then we can define the boundaries.
If indeed we have to define boundaries. We could alternatively, and we talked about this 3 years ago, start looking at focal points and looking at how the the allegiance to the concept of a neighborhood or the different attitudes about that neighborhood tend to diminish as you move away from that focal point toward other focal points. We talked about that briefly when Kent Bagley was still here. Set it aside in the interest of pursuing the downtown plan. I think it's time to bring that up before we start making assumptions on drawing boundaries.
Dennis is doing our little whiteboard thing. First thing we were talking about that I've got down is the PDO process with defining our responsibilities and authorities.
Do we also want a process, responsibility, and authority item for just the general comp plan and defining the process with City Council?
Yeah, I see those two separate issues, the PDO process and how it works versus the...
That'd be great to know our responsibilities and authorities before we get into the next area.
And I would suggest, too, relating to that, and this sort of all comes together as we discuss it, but, you know, thinking about different project management processes I've been involved with, you know, if we could agree on sort of a charter approach with the City Council, you know, this is how we're going to address, and this is, you know, sort of some high-level guidelines, then, you know, maybe we don't run into a difference of opinion about what's in the document and what we're doing.
Okay, and Dennis, I also heard South Santa Fe corridor. And another one was templates for the neighborhoods and including best practices with the templates. Sorry, we're speaking pretty quickly. The best practices.
Also setting joint priorities with City Council.
And then...
And I'd just like to add, and this maybe is coming from somebody who's only been on the comp plan for a little less than a year, right? Maybe along with all of this, maybe there's a different way to address some of this stuff. You know, do we always have to have 9 people together working on something, or can we break into subgroups? And do you know what I mean?
We had done that early in the process. We did break into small groups.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. It did work well when we did use that.
I think Matt has a good point in that just within our own internal group of streamlining our process of how we go about researching, coming up with material, even how we review material and how we send the comments to each other and to city staff, keeping it brief and so that we can move the process along faster. So internally, I think that'd be good to set up a procedure for us that we all understand and can agree to.
Agree.
Glenn, did you have any comments to that?
Nope.
I have another, looking at, I think, demographics, I think will be helpful, whether it's, and on that point too, if there's other areas of research so that when we make decisions, we've got quantifiable information that we're basing our decisions on. Whether, and also demographics, whether it's also some statistics on when we're looking at land use or other areas that we can make an informed decision based on that.
And along with that, it would be nice to define a template for the overall comp plan? So as we're moving, we can just insert text or, we'll know what subject matters we're dealing with in the overall comp plan.
I agree with that, and I just suggest that none of this diminishes quality, but it just lets us complete the process faster. And beyond just having a template, which to me is a little more than a table of contents of what we're going to include, there could be interchangeable statements that we could use that we've all agreed on the text of a particular statement so that we can move on that quickly.
I think Dennis and I have recently gone through several of the neighborhoods, and there's not really a whole lot to add. If you want to keep it up at high level, in some of the neighborhoods, they're pretty consistent. We want to protect them from outside forces, and I don't think any of that has changed. But I think you're also talking about, Matt, is more of a standardized process of how we're going to meet with neighborhoods and develop the work product, right? I think that's going to be a real key.
Although it's clear that the Planning Commission did a great job of interacting with people with all the attempts and meetings and things like that for interaction and feedback and things like that. So all I'm about is we heard pretty constantly from our public meeting that this took too long. And I just think if we can do things so that we move faster, but safely and completely represent the needs of the city, then we're doing ourselves a favor.
So speed comp plan. Okay. Any other?
So the only other thing I don't think we really mentioned the parking.
Yeah.
Right? And I know that's a big deal that we need to address, although I'm not sure we're going to address it without a checkbook. But
Well, yeah. I mean, keep in mind that we still have the implementation plan and your downtown plan. And that is an issue that's on there as a high priority, so we're not going to lose sight of that. So really, I think if this list is beyond the downtown, I think that would probably be the most helpful.
And one of the things that, Jenny, you recommended is that we look at the implementation plan quarterly and address the progress and kind of just take that a step at a time on a quarterly basis for the downtown area. We also talked about we didn't talk about it, City Council did, Broadway corridor, that's becoming a hotter topic.
Hotter topic than the Santa Fe corridor?
I don't know. But that Santa Fe corridor is what we agreed upon as a commission. And I feel kind of strongly that we need to support that. And then maybe after the Santa Fe, we can address the Broadway corridor.
Given the amount of green development, meaning in the developmental sense, not in the sustainability sense, that's possible. Green development on raw land that's possible in the South Santa Fe corridor. I'd certainly hate to see development occur before we get around to trying to establish a consensus about the mix of activities that should occur down there.
They've already started with doing several plans.
That's to my point.
Are you talking about the PDO on the Ensor property?
Well, that and the 7-Eleven right next to the park and other ones that I believe are going to be going before us here soon.
Yeah. Dennis, how stands the proposal to take over what was to be a Walmart site and turn it into open space? Is that still proceeding? Has it been settled?
I don't know about the open space part of it, but there is an applicant on that property to do a plan development, basically. And they're at the
rezone,
very
correct?
beginning part. It's Designs by Sundown. Put their corporate offices there.
So, Steve, your point is well taken. The events are very quickly overtaking us.
Yes.
On a related note, I got a question. Is Aspen Grove, was that on a PDO or?
It was a PD. It's a PDI, so it's a PD plan that allows certain uses and calls out specific uses. So both the shopping center as well as Alta Aspen Grove residential are all part of that larger PD.
So when they have large changes in there, does that not go before us? Because it's not a
if they're
PDO?
consistent with what's in the PD as approved. So if they have something that's not consistent with the plan as approved, it would come back, it'd have to be amended.
Okay, where I'm getting at is knocking down the couple of restaurants and putting up the new additions that
Yeah,
they got there.
there's not, because the zoning actually stands, the site plan was changed, but the actual zoning remains the same. It
Even though
allowed
they
for
got
that.
different, you
Right.
know, the buildings are going to be increasing.
Correct, yeah, the zoning allowed that kind of flexibility in terms of the commercial square footage. So,
Dennis, that's more in the detail of how much commercial and parking and that sort of thing. Did they not file an amendment to the PDO when they changed where they were going to put commercial space, retail space, residential space?
The one they changed, yeah, they originally were Alta Aspen Grove, because zone PDI was going to be office. It was going to be office park. And so when they changed that from office to residential, they actually went through and did an amendment on the PD plan.
So that significant change did
Correct.
come up as a
Absolutely.
PDO amendment?
Yep, sure.
Okay.
But that was different than the actual Aspen Grove itself.
Correct.
Delta, yeah.
Oh, it's the same, part of the same zoning. So,
Did we get heights on this list? Height?
Specific to the downtown area or citywide?
General, citywide?
That's true. We did talk about a couple of things on the parking lot, this being one of them and sustainability being the other.
In the sustainability, I'm thinking that we can put that in the template area. The overall template of the downtown, or not the overall template of the comprehensive plan for the city.
And recognizing that our first attempt for sustainability extended nowhere beyond city practices themselves, had touched in no way upon development or existing uses, then we might want to keep that in mind when we take it up again and see if there isn't something we really want to do. But I would suggest we have a discussion with City Council up front, just how far they're going to let us go. If we're going to try and put teeth into sustainability issues in terms of development, redevelopment, new building, that sort of thing, and City Council is going to turn around and say, oh, we want the flexibility not to have it in writing, then why waste our time?
Well, and one of the things that we as a planning commission can recommend to the city council is that they take over the entire development of the comprehensive plan for the city.
Which was on that first page on our, on the complex.
Responsibility and ownership.
I don't think we're trying to shirk the responsibility. All we're trying to do is get an answer to a simple question. Are we going to be listened to, or every time we produce any recommendation with teeth, council is going to say, we want the flexibility to make up our own minds issue by issue? Because if that's the case, I'm not wasting my time the way we have for the last 4 years.
I think we're all saying the same thing in a different.
I think so, too. I'm just a little more heated about it.
Jenny?
I have another one to add is looking at the housing and this goes off of demographics, but we have more of our aging senior population and accommodating them, as well as more young families with children that would like to live in the city of Littleton or that already live in the city of Littleton, but as their family expands can continue to live here.
So we're really talking about not just housing diversity as a trendy social topic, but what is worth pursuing to the overall net benefit. mutual benefit of the community as a whole, and what can the city, through its administrative procedures or zoning ordinance or comp plan, do to make that process more creative, more productive?
There's got to be more issues. If 24 isn't
That'll
enough.
keep us going for about 24 months right there.
More than that.
Safe bet, Matt.
Well, I think they fall into 2 or 3 different categories here. One are those citywide issues. Then there's the neighborhood level issues, as we've been focusing on for the past 4 years with the downtown area. And then there's sort of the specialty areas such as parking or height and so on that are subsets of those. Not to suggest that the Santa Fe corridor, the Broadway corridor, some of the other neighborhoods that we've identified are less important, but I'd certainly like us to explore the citywide issues. We haven't really been focusing on that for the past couple of years, and I think it establishes a framework for what we talk about at the neighborhood level. So to the extent that we have a good understanding of what's happening throughout the city, we can then put in context what's happening in the neighborhoods.
And I'm going to repeat something I've said more than once in the past about the neighborhoods. Everybody, before we start talking about that whole approach, go back and read the existing comp plan. It's a short document. It's not as long as the document we approved tonight. In particular, I think what you're going to find is the similarities between neighborhoods, what they aspire to, what they valued, are a lot more common than their differences. Matter of fact, what comes to mind in terms of specific differences is one neighborhood that really embraced the idea of better or more commercial development within the neighborhood. One group of neighborhoods that gave more priority to providing alternative access to Heritage High School to reduce the concentration of traffic on particular streets. And a couple of neighborhoods that were more concerned about enforcement of zoning and law enforcement in general. Otherwise, most of the neighborhoods have the same interests at heart. So go back and read it.
Yeah, that's along the lines of what I was saying about the templates, is that you could have 80% of every neighborhood's template done pretty rapidly. It's the 20% that we have to sweat, right?
Yeah.
But are those the same people that are in those neighborhoods that were there 30 years ago when the comp plan was
Well, that's why we reach out to find out. But I think we start from, and the last time around, 30 years ago, the city staff went to the neighborhoods with a prepared, I don't know what I want to call it, a background presentation on the history of the neighborhood, how the neighborhood fit within the context or the fabric of the overall city, discussion of some common elements that they thought would be of interest to everybody, and then the neighborhood say, yeah, we agree with that, but here's what's important to us. I expect we'll do the same thing once we decide how we chop it up into 4 or 5 neighborhoods or 30 or 40.
The South Santa Fe corridor was a study, correct, Dennis? It's not anything that's actually a neighborhood part of the plan, correct?
There actually is a portion of the plan. The last chapter in the plan is the South Santa Fe corridor, so it is included in there as well. So the Broadway study corridor was also called a study, so it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, the Broadway study corridor, unfortunately, is not incorporated in the comp plan. The South Platte corridor study, or South Santa Fe corridor study, replaced a previous element of comp plan for the Platte Valley. I'm not sure exactly when that occurred, but I assume it was in the 80s or something, relatively shortly after adoption of the overall comp plan.
Yeah, or more recently, at least this version, because it was amended again, I think. So I think this is the second iteration of that change even. So, even with that, Steve, it did not incorporate all of the South neighborhood. As you know, it did not include all of the South Santa Fe corridor. So
there is still part of the neighborhood down there that
does not have a plan for
Correct.
it.
You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
there's several little fragments all over the city.
Is there a TIS around the mineral station?
There is, yes.
So there's a TIS there as well that
Right.
we have to be cognizant of. And
Correct.
Are we going
Which-
to talk about, do we want to change the boundaries of TISs? Do we want to get rid of the TIS?
Absolutely, we need to consider
So
that
should we
as well.
put TIS on the agenda?
Tis.
Yeah. Good point.
Tis pros and cons.
Tis the season.
Well, and
Okay,
I
one more
think,
pun allowed, and then we shut this off.
I think that part of the discussions that we've had previously on the TIS is it doesn't make any sense and that we definitely need to change it. So now we need to provide recommendations on how to change it. Could I go back to the public process? I think we also need to agree on the format that we're going to have with the public outreach and kind of maintain the similar format for all of the neighborhoods. Do you guys, depending on if there's significant changes or not?
We may want to see where we head in the direction of neighborhood definition and identification before we commit to something like that.
We could have an overall template, we can certainly modify it.
But if we don't know how many or where or what we're going to be looking for, it's a little premature to start talking about a template for public approach.
Okay, any other issues? So I'm wondering if we should take a look at, or prioritize this according to what Craig is saying, is look at citywide issues versus neighborhood versus specialty areas or topics. And then I just wanted to add one more on, categorize it into the processes. So categorize it into 4 areas. What do you think about that?
That makes sense.
I'm sorry, Linda, citywide, neighborhoods,
Citywide neighborhoods, specialty areas or topics, and process.
I like that.
And I think with that, then we might have an idea of what some of the priorities of the commission might be. So do we want to just go ahead and start with one and kind of go through the entire list? Yes, no, maybe so?
That's good. Yeah.
So you wanted to consolidate those?
To-
Which category it falls into at
Yeah.
this point?
Does that make sense? Glenn?
Sure. You want to organize this list into those 4 categories?
Mm-hmm.
not that we necessarily have to plow through them one category at a time, but just so we can keep things organized and, yeah.
I think, ultimately, do you want to set a priority tonight of what's most important? Because I think we can organize it into these categories for you rather than
Okay.
waste your time doing that tonight. And what ultimately do you want at the end of the day here? A total list, or do you want, again, rank what the commission feels most important? Because we could do a similar process as we did with the council changes to the general plan. Send out and you can vote 1 to 10 or however you want to do that. And
Yeah, I think if you put them together and then we could rank them and you compile that ranking,
okay,
it would be the best, I think.
Peel the onion one layer at a time.
Right. And then we can
Then it's-
start developing an agenda and put together the,
well, ultimately, the direction is going to come from council. So
I was going to say, do we have any idea where they want us to go?
I don't at this point. No.
Steve?
Realistically, council has mentioned to us that they want us to jump into the parking next downtown. Is there any chance that we have anything that we can really do with the parking downtown, or can we just study it and come up with basically nothing?
Agree that nothing can be done?
Well,
Or agree that we have no authority to do anything.
I move that we suggest a parking structure. Sorry.
Because that's going to have a lot to say with on where it would be voted, on how to rank it if we're not going to be able to do anything about it.
one of the things that we did talk about as far as staff that we could start with the parking is what I don't think we have a real good handle on is today's land uses and the amount of parking that's being generated. So one of the things we actually budgeted for this year is an analysis that just shows every hour of typical days, where is the parking located geographically, and then tying that back to land use. So in essence, we can create our own model of the downtown and the parking demand. So next time you get a restaurant at Prince Street or Curtis Street, you can get a little bit better idea of how many additional parking spaces are going to be generated. So.
Do we need to augment personally staff's time to go door to door and determine how many square feet of what use is available, and so
Yes,
we can match
we
it up to
will.
parking needs?
Kurt?
Yes, I envision hiring a bunch of college students to do a lot of that.
Will that be just inside the downtown area? Will you do that parking study across the railroad depression, because that's where a lot of RTD?
Yeah, I don't know that we've actually figured. I think we would, we've had the studies done like 3 different times, and I think just to be consistent and see trends, I think we'd kind of like to stay consistent with that.
But doesn't, I mean, now that the light rail station is there, and we have seen that people are parking over there, and we're getting complaints from neighbors, I think we need to at least consider looking at how many people are parking over there and what times of day they're parking
Yeah,
in
because
neighborhoods.
leaving out that data kind of distorts the picture of how much parking is
big.
needed and how much
Right.
parking is in fact occurring because of downtown uses.
If a restaurant comes in on the east end of Maine, I might park over in that neighborhood and walk across the.
Steve?
Would we have any authority to changing any of the parking requirements downtown also?
You would be amending the zoning code. That fits into your purview.
Matt?
Nothing now, just thinking.
What? Okay.
Yeah, it seems like I've read through some of the prior parking studies, and I may be misremembering, but it seems that they identified the issues quite well. But I don't recall there ever coming out of it a real plan for how to address the issues. And I think that's the obvious follow-on is what is the best way, instead of compromising the appropriate land uses downtown to accommodate parking for the desired land uses there, and that should come out of this whatever plan is developed.
Dennis, when was the last substantive planning study done downtown?
I think it was done about probably 8 years ago.
Okay.
And the only thing they did have one element. I think they did make a recommendation in terms of what the parking ratio should be for the requirement for zoning, what they thought made sense at that point in time. So we would need to go back and evaluate that if it's still.
I want to make 2 observations in that context. Number one, that was long before we waived the parking requirement for Myrtles. It was long before we lost the public parking behind Ranke Brothers. And the reason we got into this question of what kind of uses are going on downtown really was reflected in Steve's question earlier tonight about Aspen Grove. What are the uses that are being added? How is that changing the mix and therefore the need for parking in that particular area? We've said before, there appears to be a distortion in applying the same on-site parking requirements in a downtown setting where you have residents and you have commercial activity other than retail, and you have light rail and other public transit connected to that area, and then using the same standards that you apply to perimeter outlying shopping areas and strip malls. So we've said that that's a factor. We need to come to grips with what the factors are that dictate whether we need more parking than those peripheral areas or less, and at which times. I mean, I got to tell you, the last 2 times I've come downtown and dropped my wife and the rest of our party off and then circled the blocks looking for parking, it drove me nuts to see Ranke Brothers' lot empty, to see Jose's lot over off of Alamo empty. We've got some specific issues that we need to grab a hold of and try and understand.
One of the discussions we've had a while ago is how do we handle this issue the best? And one of the suggestions was maybe spending 5 minutes a meeting talking about outlining the issues on a whiteboard like this, and so that pretty soon we'll have a comprehensive approach, and we'll know all the details that we need to know.
If
in
we
dealing
organize
with
this into
parking.
4 categories with priorities within those categories, there's nothing to say we can't tackle 2 or more of those categories in specific segments of a meeting in order to make progress down along the line, instead of saying that one category has a higher priority than another, because I don't think anybody here tonight is willing to assert that.
So and just in tonight's meeting, I have 4 different suggestions for parking that we could apply to the discussions that we would have.
So set an
And we can
agenda.
say-
So I guess the other thing I was going to add, and I was going to say it earlier, but we were going in the direction of parking, is we're trying to prioritize and divide up our list. Maybe another way to divide up our list is, and don't shake your fist at me, I know you guys, is, let's divide up our list into what staff can proceed with and what we should handle. I think it would be a very good idea if staff developed a template for the comp plan and took, maybe they can take 2 lucky members of the team here and have them work with them on that or something, but they could develop the template. That's a 40-hour thing. That's not a 2 hours at a time thing. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, the commission we can divide this up into priorities of who's going to do what, and approach it that way, I guess.
I'm going to urge again that we focus up front on determining the problems that we're trying to address, identifying the criteria for success, then worry about the template. To try and design a template before you know what you're going to do, what it's going to be in there, what you're going to attempt, is insane.
But then we could set that as a separate agenda item, and then then the city staff can take it and build the template off of our discussions and what we determine our priorities for both the overall template and the neighborhood issues. You think?
Back to parking, I had a question about what are the alternatives for parking. There's public-private partnership. Is there anything else? I'd like to see staff's input on what other ways do we have to get parking?
Different funding mechanisms, but they all fall within that, absolutely.
Yeah, one of those 3 things. And what's council's appetite for public parking?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll have to find out. Yeah,
We can't
say we'd like you to fund parking when they have no appetite for
nor
funding
do we
parking
know what
at
the
all.
property owners' appetite is either. So we have to find all that out.
And unlike a peripheral development, we can't impose, we can't, how do I say this? We can't demand to have one entity with whom we can negotiate for something like that. We can't impose a business improvement district. And the idea has been approached in the past with no real success. But in one way of looking at the problem, as seeing downtown as a commercial area, shopping area, a little more than shopping, obviously, with offices and residential areas. But if you look at downtown as a commercial area comparable to a peripheral shopping center, at some point we have to start applying the same reasoning, the same measurements, the same expectations to that, recognizing that there are different conditions. So maybe that's something we need to discuss with Hoodlum or somebody else, is how do we get this onto a rational, workable process?
So now that we've identified a number of issues, staff's going to put the list together and categorize it into the 4 categories and send it out for prioritization. What are some of your ideas as to how to proceed with this? I mean, for me, I've heard a couple things, and one is the discussion of the citywide issues and look at similarities of the various areas, development of an overall plan, or actually overall plan template, and some of the neighborhood priorities and boundaries, and that might get us a head start in working through the process.
I'm going to remind everybody, one of the things we did up front with the downtown planning was ask staff to give us present some basic considerations about what's working, not working downtown, what factors seem to be in play. Maybe we ought to ask the same thing about the city as a whole, or even city in particular areas, or residential, commercial, that sort of thing.
So what is
Give us an
working?
overview.
So add that to the list of what is working and what is not working with the existing downtown area plan?
Set a foundation for where we think we're headed.
I think that's a good idea. That as staff, I'm sure there's things that you're seeing in the city that highlighting there's some areas opportunities and some problems. So I think it'd be great to hear that.
Jenny did a great job in presenting what I think are some big issues overall for the community, and I think Craig hit on it first. What I think is the first step, rather than getting immediately down in some weeds, are what are those major issues for the community as a whole, and that will direct some priority. But keep in mind, we still are getting direction from City Council. So what I hope is at least the Planning Commission's best guess at what we think is important in the community. We'll get that to Council, and ultimately through the process in February, here, go forth and do these 3 to 5 things, whatever it is.
All the more reason to recognize that we don't have to dedicate ourselves to one single issue through to fruition before we take up the next.
True.
We can do things in parallel.
I mean, I have heard from a couple of council members, they think that 1981 comp plan should be our top priority. And so exactly what you're talking about, those broad brush goals and those broad brush issues for the community, start there first. But there's certainly some technical work on parking that staff can do as well. So we will put this into 4 categories, send it out with the same instructions, give us your top 10. Is that good? Meaning, how do we go? 10 was the most points, so that was your highest.
Unless it's me and then it's opposite.
The other thing,
There are a few people that had that understanding. Like, I think number 1's most important. So.
the other thing I think we might want to consider is at one point, the chair and Chair Pro Tem were working with staff to develop an agenda for each meeting, known well in advance, setting aside timing or times to be allowed so that we could keep our discussion in proportion and not run away on one topic. I think as we get down into the weeds, as Glenn so poetically phrased it, it would be helpful to resume that practice.
Well, and one of the things I would kind of like to see, and similar to what City Council is doing, is that we'll have a agenda and subject areas and categories months in advance so that we know what, I know, but so we'll know.
Optimist.
Well, at least that we've got an idea of what we're doing and what we need to, I mean, these are our performance goals, for lack of a better word, and, this is what we're doing, and that also allows the community to see this is what the Planning Commission, or at least this is the intent of the Planning Commission for the next several months. And Glenn, you can tell me if that's just not a realistic, well, once we get the priorities from the City Council.
It's ultimately our work plan. So, yeah, you can tell the community this is what we're working on, butt out, yeah.
Well,
Don't give us any other issues in the meantime. I mean, it's a best guess.
And at least we'll know the neighborhoods that we're working on, so the people in the neighborhoods will know exactly what we're doing, and it will be clear to everybody, and maybe we can post it on the web, too. This is the tentative work plan from the Planning Commission.
Obviously, it's updated week to week, because if we get a new case or something that pushes us out, we don't have time to work on that project.
No, I think the other thing we're going to find is, regardless of how we prioritize this current list, as we start discussion, we're going to find that, wait a minute, we've got ourselves trying to address this problem before we've even explored this other one, and we were putting the cart before the horse. So making adjustments to the sequence is probably more important than worrying about adjustments to priorities.
And staying focused on the topic, too. And really, and that's why I think the agenda is going to help, is because we can really stay focused on the topic at hand.
I think one thing we learned, too, in the downtown area plan is we really need to be on the same page with council as we move forward, and that there be some sort of regular check-in, a more regular check-in that, you know, and it's under the category of responsibilities and authorities, but it's also just communication. And so perhaps there's a more regular quarterly breakfast or something that allows us to share that information before you get to the end of it, and we're over here.
And maybe a mutual friend or two can express the desire that when we have these meetings, they're discussions, not an attempt to present something that council can vote 4-3 on. That would help. Would have helped a lot in the last 4 years. That's just me.
Well, and this is timely because council is deciding tomorrow on their quarterly breakfast schedule, or their council outreach schedule for next year, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I suggested the exact same thing for that one of their, excuse me, their quarterly breakfasts is, they should have one right away. I think if the plan gets adopted, then actually debrief on that and talk about how the communication works between the Planning Commission and Council.
One other point for us to keep in mind, we will have possibly turnover in Planning Commission. Well, we'll have at least one new Planning Commission alternate, but we potentially face some kind of turnover in Planning Commission composition after March 31st. Typically, we try and do a reasonably prompt work session shortly after all the members are seated so that we can get everybody's head into the same perspective, head in the same direction. So let's not lose sight of the fact that regardless of what we do with priority lists or grouping or work plan, we do need to, I think, go back to that practice so we can get us all on the same page. The schedules, the timing is a little out of whack with what we're talking about, what we assume tonight, but we can't lose sight of it.
So any other comment, or Glenn?
I was just saying thank you. Ready to
Any
wrap it
other
up.
comments on this besides adding what is working and not working with the existing comp plan? Okay, so if you guys have any other suggestions of any additions to this list, please get it to Glenn so that he can put it on
I
the
don't know
overall
that,
list.
I mean, we've kind of created a list with the group. I don't think it would be good if people separately sent me items to add to it, because not everybody would know what they were. And
Okay.
I think we have plenty to work on.
Yeah, if somebody has some brilliant inspiration, we can always take it up when we look at the results of the prioritization.
So that brings us to the next steps with this prioritization. So we'll set the priorities. So are we going to bring it back to the Planning Commission and discuss it, or how should we approach the next steps?
Maybe they can just forward to us the results of the matrix.
Sure. Sure, and ultimately what I would like to do is send that on to council as they deliberate about goals and how to get there. Now, again, they're going to stay very high level, I think is the goal, and then bring it back to staff, and we'll use your list as well in setting some of the actual work elements to accomplish those goals.
Personally, I'd like to see us get the results of that and have a chance for at least a brief discussion on how it may be self-sorting in terms of sequence, in parallel or in line, before we just hand a list cold to City Council and say, here are our priorities.
Okay.
I'd like a chance to organize it a little bit.
When will our next meeting be?
Yeah, that's my next question. Do we meet on the 26th?
Is that like
city's closed?
No,
January
we will not meet
16th?
on the 26th. We are closed.
Is that like January 16th is our next meeting?
Is there,
That'll be
well,
the
January
January
2nd is the
16th.
other one, and we're closed then,
9th
too.
would be the 9th.
9th, I think, Steve.
Well, because we continued the other meeting to January 16th.
Why did we do that?
And if we're supposed to have a meeting on the 9th and we don't have a meeting on the 16th,
Don't we usually meet the second and fourth?
Second and fourth, so we'll meet on the 9th. Yeah.
All right, so what do we do about the continued hearing?
Yeah, we continued the meeting till the 16th, or that hearing to the 16th. We don't have a meeting on the 16th then, or do we now?
Good point. Good question, Steve.
No, that's the Historic Preservation Board. So.
Then I think Ernie needs to talk with the
We need to set
Jiffy
the
Lube
right date.
people and
Yeah.
get the date straight.
Right. So it'd actually be
Do we need to make a motion to change that 16th continuance to our next meeting, or?
It'd be
On the
It
public
can't.
hearing,
the
though,
9th or the 23rd.
Well, we have to have a date certain.
Well, that would be the date certain, the 9th, not the 16th.
or the 23rd.
Or the 20.
Well, the 23rd isn't any more the 16th than the 9th is the 16th. If we're going to change it at all, we're going to have to figure out the legal process for doing it.
Well, I think at this point, I don't know if they can reconsider that vote and change it. I think you could.
Because we're still in a regular meeting.
Right.
And I would recommend the 23rd, because we really were looking for an amount of time that we can sit down with them and hammer out if there is going to be a solution.
So can, Steve?
I move that we'll move the,
If I could, I'm sorry, if I could just interject, if we could have a motion first to reconsider the vote on whatever item it is first, and vote on that first, and then vote to change it.
okay, I have the motion to reconsider the date set for the 16th of January.
Is that case number?
For the
Case number, the continuous, and the case
Just
number
say item 6B.
Right here.
of item 6B, case number SDP 11-0006.
Second.
Seconded by
Guys.
Craig. I follow the thumbs. Okay, so all those in favor for the motion to reconsider the date for the 16th? And that is unanimous, so...
I'd like to make the motion to set the date for the continuation of the hearing for item 6B, case number SDP 11-0006, to January 23rd of 2012.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, so can,
Got that, Doreen? That'll be a mess.
Thank you for catching that.
so do you all agree that we should have a brief discussion on the results of this matrix at the next meeting, the January 6th meeting, or?
I'd like to try to get the results before the meeting, though.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
if, you know, because I don't think it'll take too long for staff to compile the results to our responses to them.
No, if you can give me your vote this week, we'll have it to you next week.
Okay.
How long would you think it would take for us to get our 10 categories back to us?
Next week.
I think if we could get it out, hopefully tomorrow or the next day, and if you could vote by the end of this week, we would have it to you early next week.
Going to put a bow on it for Christmas?
We could do that, too.
All right, so are you ready to move on?
I just, not sure if we had it on here specifically, but I'm thinking through the idea of the citywide comp plan. We have approach to comp plan, we have the comp plan responsibilities and authorities. Do we actually have something on there to do the citywide comp plan? Well, I think, you know, we should at least put it on the list as something that we can prioritize. I'm thinking you know, a citywide comp plan update of the 1981 comp plan that includes components of transportation, land use. I mean, that's a full-blown comp plan, but it's a lot of work, especially seeing what we just went through with the downtown area, but it seems like it should be on the list.
You don't think that's a 600-pound gorilla sitting in the room in any case?
800.
Okay, 800 pounds. Do I hear 9?
But we should be able to put the categories in pretty quickly and identify what we think should be included in the plan. So what did you think about tonight's process in identifying some of these issues? I mean, do you think it was useful?
I think it was useful.
Okay. So any other comments before we move to reports and hopefully get out of here a little bit early?
I just add one thing, just looking at this list. I would guess that if you look at it closely, you'll find some commonalities. So maybe instead of having 27 items, you have 17, because there's a lot of different things. So,
A lot of overlap.
yeah.
Okay, so reports from the staff,
I don't have anything.
with the exception of our meeting on the 26th is canceled.
Correct. And hopefully everybody enjoys our holidays, and
Merry Christmas.
we will be. Thank you.
And HP board?
I think we need a liaison.
Yeah.
Tony was the official liaison, correct?
Tony was, yeah. And
So can we actually vote on an appointment now?
when do they meet?
The Mondays that we're not doing.
When do they meet?
The Mondays that
Yeah,
we're
it's the alternate Mondays.
Is
Is
it
it
meet twice a
one a
month?
month? I think
It's only once a month.
Once a
though, isn't
month, yeah.
it? Like the first Monday
The third Monday.
or third.
Once a month.
And they're actually
They meet once a month.
The third Monday.
So you'd have at least one Monday night free.
I nominate Steve.
Well, it's something that could be tag team too. I know when I did it, there was always somebody, Norm was there to back up, and when Tony was doing it, he needs some backup, so I'd be willing to go occasionally, but I can't commit to every meeting.
I'd be willing to go occasionally too.
Me too.
I'd be willing to go occasionally, but again, not every Monday.
So should we vote on like a sign-up list? And planning commission members just
Don't we
sign
have
up?
one or
One
two
main contact.
primaries, and then
Yeah, the whole idea of a liaison is to establish some kind of lines of communication, familiarity, trust even. So it'd be nice if we could get at least one of us to say, yes, I'll be the liaison, as long as every now and then somebody can step in for me, as has been done in the past.
I want to be the liaison to the liquor authority.
Shoot, I don't think we have one of those.
Dave, are you volunteering to be the
I
historic?
wasn't planning on it, no.
Do we have any volunteers?
New guy.
If it helps, the meeting next week has been canceled.
Okay, I'll do it.
Beat me to it, Mac.
All right,
But I'll vote for Dave if he wants to.
I'll do it.
Pardon?
I'll nominate Matt.
All right, second, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Unless
And that
somebody
with
wants to throw
recognition that we're all,
or bandwagon.
we're all there to,
You're not stuck.
yeah, you're not stuck, so if you have any issues, just holler and scream.
It's a lot more exciting than our meetings are.
Okay, so do we have any commissioners' comments? Anybody?
Glenn or Dennis, can you explain why we got the notice from the state of Colorado giving us each a copy of the application for a federal hazard elimination program?
And the math involved.
Yeah.
It was mailed to you directly?
It was in our packet.
And we were even supposed to send some sort of check with our application.
That is. No, it was in an envelope. We each had an envelope with our name on it specifically from the Department of State of Colorado, DOT. Did you not
No,
see
I don't
this?
think staff got a
I'd be
copy.
happy to share my copy with you.
Thank you very much.
I think it's misdirected, but
We had it in a sealed yellow envelope in our packet.
When mail comes in with your names on it,
We just stuff it? Okay.
okay.
you were on somebody's mailing list.
I'll note that the envelope did not self-destruct 10 seconds after I opened it, so. That was one word.
I'm for eliminating hazards, I think, as everybody should be.
Is it time for a recommendation to adjourn?
Well, we've got to finish the reports. If anybody has any reports.
Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas to everybody. That's my report.
Okay, I
Second
don't
the
have
motion.
anything, so
Third
do
that.
we have a motion to adjourn?
So
Yes, motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? That is unanimous.
Something I thought was
And
stuck
thank
in
you
my mouth.